Yes, guys, hello and welcome back to the Spurs Related YouTube channel. I hope everyone is doing very, very well this evening. Today, got a very, very special transfer update video for you guys. We are absolutely delighted to be joined alongside journalist and commentator Ben Jacobs to bring you all the latest Tottenham transfer news. Ben, firstly, thank you so much for coming on. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. We're rivaling each other for great backgrounds. You've got a lovely little stadium behind you. Assume you're not actually outside it, whereas my New York background is legit. That is actual New York behind me.
Love it, love it. What a place New York is, by the way. So that your background beats mine. And yes, I'm not at the stadium. Frank, how you doing? You good?
I'm all good. I'm all good. I'm excited for tonight. It's a special one, so it should be good.
Awesome stuff. And guys, if you do enjoy this transfer update, all things related to Spurs, please do smash the thumbs up and subscribe to Spurs Related if you are new to the channel. That would be absolutely great. And get your comments in the chat. We have a list of questions for Ben that we asked on Spurs Related's Instagram this morning. And Ben, as you can imagine, we got hundreds of questions about Morgan Gibbs-White.
Of course.
And I'm sure you will bring us the absolute latest. So looking forward to that. So should we get started?
Yeah, let's do it. Fire away.
Awesome. So first question is from Wellstead Finley on Instagram. And he's saying, what is the latest with Morgan Gibbs-White's move to Tottenham? And will it be done before our pre-season Asia tour, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure on a timescale for when it will be done, but what I can tell you is that Tottenham remain optimistic. So the situation is fluid because of the legalities behind it. Tottenham deny any wrongdoing. A release clause is a release clause, whereas Nottingham Forest say you only know about the release clause if you come to us because of the manner in which it's written into the contract. And sometimes, without going into too much detail, there is a secret clause that can only become apparent or is obligated to be revealed after you bid at a certain threshold, or if it's offered willingly by a potential selling club. So that's the argument from Forest, that the manner in which Tottenham learnt about the release clause makes it invalid. And they may actually even argue legally it makes it invalid to everybody because it's been put out there in the market in a way that they think breaches confidentiality. Daniel Levy and his team, very experienced, though, they will know the legalities. We have a kind of one instance similar to this where 2 years ago, Chelsea tried to trigger a release clause for Michael Elise. Crystal Palace said that they went about it the wrong way. It actually resulted in Chelsea backing off, and then Elise signed a new deal. So it's kind of an all or nothing situation right now where Forest want Gibbs-White to sign a new deal and end all of this, but they've tried for a year. Gibbs-White wants to go to Spurs. I don't see it rumbling on to the point where nothing happens and he just gets in Forest limbo. So I think Forest are using some of these threats to see whether maybe Gibbs-White changes his mind and puts pen to paper on an extended contract that would remove the release clause. But Tottenham are just sticking to their position. They think it's eventually going to get done. They think the triggering of the release clause was legitimate. And if they want it all to go away, even though they can't trigger the release clause legally at the moment, they could make a slightly higher offer and Nottingham Forest would still be obligated to listen to that bid and engage with them. So this idea that Spurs can't do anything, they can't speak to the player, they can't find a resolution, is actually not true to my understanding. I think there's still a very realistic chance the Gibbs-White deal gets done. Player wants the move. And actually the onus at the moment is on Nottingham Forest, not Tottenham, to either take legal action or prove via the Premier League that something untoward happened. If they do that, then the deal can potentially be off. But at the moment, there's a lot of threats and a lot of words, but not actually any escalation yet of the legal action. And this is why Tottenham are sticking to their position and they still feel that they can get the deal over the line. I just can't tell you when, because it's no longer about pre-season or not pre-season. It's around, are Nottingham Forest going to delay this further by turning the threat of legal action into actual legal action?
Got it. And for our viewers also listening on around that, you mentioned that actual, a lot of words, no actual legal action in the sense that, when do you think they'll submit something, if they haven't already, to the Premier League to make it a more official sort of legal threat?
They might not, because this is also buying Nottingham Forest time to try and get Gibbs-White to change his mind and to look for a replacement. I know Bilal Al-Khanous Leicester is one player that they've made advances on. He has a 26 million euros, ironically, release clause, but it's not so secret. But maybe they go down that route. Maybe we find a replacement comes in and it escalates, and that opens the door for the Spurs move a little bit quicker. But I don't think Forest are just in a room with lawyers thinking, how do we turn this into something? I think there's a lot of threats to try and get Tottenham to back off, but there's also a lot of work being done by the recruitment team to find a Gibbs-White replacement, which may suggest that at the end of the day, Forest feel that if this was challenged in a court of law, the Tottenham release clause would hold up. And if Forest do go from threat of legal action to legal action, you might find Spurs embrace that and say, go ahead, we'll prove it in a court of law, and then we'll trigger the release clause. So this isn't about Tottenham backing off. And again, I repeat what I said before, we have to be respectful to both sides. Only Forest really know what's written. And if the playing side, the agent side, or anybody connected to Gibbs-White was under any kind of confidentiality, there may even be denials from that side that they were the ones that gave the intel to Tottenham. Perhaps they learnt it through just their industry knowledge, fair and square. So all of that would come out in the wash. And this is why I think that neither side will necessarily really want it to run its full legal course. Perhaps the Premier League is a halfway house where they can mediate between the clubs, but it would be time consuming and it would be costly to take full on legal action. And effectively, both clubs would have to air their dirty laundry. And I'm not so sure that even Forest want that scenario, even if they ended up keeping Gibbs-White as a result, because you're left with an unhappy player.
True. Very, very true. Interesting as well. What I was going to ask about also is one point you made about the transfer fee. You said, obviously, we bid the 60 million. And now, if we went back for, well, you didn't say the 65, 70, but I'm saying if we bid 65, 70 as a overage, would they perhaps be willing to shake our hands and move on? Or is that not a thing really?
Well, it's not really a Daniel Levy thing to say I could have something for 60, here's 70, but maybe 60.5 or 61. There might effectively be a way of the clubs mediating where Tottenham acknowledge, even though their denial is vociferous, but perhaps they acknowledge a solution can be found. And if they get the player, maybe they meet Nottingham Forest halfway. And then it could all be about money. So the original expectation was that Nottingham Forest, if the release clause wasn't triggered, wanted in excess of 60 million. And perhaps what you do is you say, we'll give you your 60 million on the same terms as the release clause, and we'll give you X amount of money, whether a nominal fee or slightly higher, in order to make all of this go away, knowing that the other option is Forest waste some of the 60 million on legal action, perhaps lose, and then you have a bit of bad blood, time and energy, money on legal fees, and still the player could end up leaving Tottenham, because if the Premier League determine this release clause is this release clause, and I think that's the part that is a bit underrated in all of this story, because it feels like Forest are fighting and buying time, and you have to respect that because only they know what is on paper, so we shouldn't discount their position. But in essence, the feeling is that Forest are the ones that are taking legal action. But if it gets to the point where no legal action happens from Forest and no release clause can be triggered, then Tottenham may pivot and say, we think this release clause is valid, and they have the recourse to take legal action over a football club that potentially are refusing to formalize a release clause when maybe legally Tottenham would argue that they have to. And if that eventuality arises, again, everything would have to come out to be aired. Everyone would have to see the paperwork. Everyone would have to see the ins and outs. It would be done privately between the clubs. I'm not saying it would all reach the media, but that's not a good look. And it's not necessarily a scenario that Nottingham Forest want either. So I don't think it will suit anybody in the next few days or weeks for this deal to rumble on. I would still be optimistic that Morgan Gibbs-White will be a Tottenham player. And I think the only thing that can possibly change that is if Tottenham acknowledge culpability and walk away, or if in this limbo period, Gibbs-White changes his mind and signs a new Forest deal, because that deal is there. Forest are saying you can sign tomorrow if you're prepared to end all of this and stay. But at the moment, he's not putting pen to paper because he still wants to try and find a way of getting to Spurs. And I think that only works in Tottenham's favour.
Interesting. It all seems quite positive from a Tottenham point of view. I think that's music to a lot of people's ears, what you just said there, Ben. And hopefully, he doesn't sign a new contract at Forest that has been offered. Interesting points. We've got a few more questions. Frank, I'll let you take the lead on the next one.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this yesterday, and obviously Gibbs-White's not done yet, but let's count it for now as it happens, and that's £60 million. Because I get the impression that if it doesn't happen, which you say that there's still confidence that it should, but if it doesn't, then I don't think that money will go into the abyss. I think they'll still go and spend that elsewhere. Maybe that's the wrong hunch, but that's what I think. And so it's certainly rare that Spurs sign players that are 60 million plus. I mean, I think they've only got 3. I think I'm right in that. They've only got 3. And so it's rare they do that. And to go and get him and Kudus, I know Kudus was just below, but in the space of about a week, kind of near enough wrapped up, that doesn't feel like what Tottenham do. So is this just a case of Tottenham spending money because they finished 17th and they've now got Champions League money and they want to improve on that and stabilise themselves? Or is it investment? That's kind of the main question.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, the Champions League money makes a big difference. Remember, the last time they got Champions League, there was also a relatively big spend. There were several signings that came through the door. I only ever remember because the 6th one was Jed Spence. So they headline with 6th Spence, and that doesn't go out of my head. So I remember that window and how active Tottenham were. And that was about investing money because of Champions League. And there's no doubt in my mind that if Tottenham didn't have Champions League football, they wouldn't be moving like this. 1, because that money does make a difference. And 2, because the caliber of players that they're signing want Champions League football, or certainly some form of European football. So you lose the Europa League final. I'm not so sure that Mohamed Kudus either would have necessarily found Tottenham as appealing, even though now it's billed as only wanted Spurs. But the pitch to Kudus was all around, we got money to spend, we got a new manager, we got Champions League football. It looks a whole lot different if you're getting rid of your manager because you lost the Europa League final, you don't have Champions League football, and maybe you've got less money to spend. So things get a little bit rewritten, but it's a good thing for Tottenham, obviously. And then with the investment, I think what's not clear at the moment is how the investment is broken down. But what is obvious is that investment has come and or is coming. So you might find it's ENIC investment, you might find it's directly Tottenham investment, and then separate to the investment side, where maybe they're moving money into the football club, you've got this longer term desire from Tottenham's ownership to sell to a strategic partner. And you've got a secondary commercial desire to find a big sponsorship deal, particularly around the naming rights. And not everything either has happened or will happen imminently, but there's a lot of concurrent possibilities of future investment that I'm told are not far off. So if we kind of break them down, you've got is somebody going to buy 25% or less, more likely 10 to 15% of this football club? And I don't think we're there yet, but there's definitely an American consortium that have been in quite advanced talks with Daniel Levy and his team. And then obviously people are starting to talk about, will Levy stay? Will Levy go? Is Donna Cullen's departure a sign of big change at Spurs? Potentially. But at the moment, Daniel Levy's role and any investor coming in, that part is a bit less clear. All the way back really for 2 years when I first broke that QSI were also at the table holding a conversation with Nasser Al-Khalifi and Daniel Levy present to again look at this kind of 10 to 15 number. And if that happens, it will be publicly declared, and there would be no suggestion that a strategic partner would be putting down money, spending money in advance of formalizing the deal. So the spend seems more likely, therefore, around investment ahead of a strategic partner and because of Champions League football. Then you have the secondary part, which is the sponsorship side. And I'm told that 2 companies, one in America and one in Saudi Arabia, are in very advanced talks for the stadium naming rights in a lucrative deal. And Saudi are keen to get it over the line, but it's not done yet. And it's unclear within Saudi whether or not the senior, and one of them definitely government-related figures, are necessarily going to put a potential sponsorship deal through a Saudi vehicle linked to PIF, because obviously you've got the Newcastle factor. And even if it's a very unrelated subsidiary, the optics of that may not look great. So Saudi at the moment are determining, if we go down the stadium naming rights route, 1, what will the optics be like? 2, is Daniel Levy going to go for it? And 3, regardless of the vehicle that actually invests, what are we going to call this? Because I don't think you're going to get a private Saudi company wanting their name like Noor, which is sort of an Amazon type company. I think you're going to get like a Visit Saudi type messaging or Riyadh season type messaging, or possibly an airline. We've heard some suggestions it's Riyadh Air. That's been denied to me by sources, but they are in talks with several clubs and they are the sponsor of Atletico Madrid. So keep an eye on Saudi for the stadium naming rights, but it's not done yet. And at the moment, I think they know more within Saudi than they do at Spurs, simply because within Saudi, they're trying to clarify what's our best foot forwards, what's our entity, and regardless of the entity, what kind of name might we actually put on this stadium that would benefit Saudi and its so-called Vision 2030 messages around things like health, fitness, tourism. Then you've got an American company, and they're also discussing a similar deal as well. And those two are taking place concurrently, and they're not far off as far as I'm told. So keep an eye on that. But I really think this spend is maybe about Tottenham preempting money coming in. But given none of the deals are done, it would be highly, highly untypical for a business perspective to be spending somebody else's money before they're formally in at the club in any of these areas that I've referenced.
Really interesting points there, Ben, especially on the stadium naming rights and the vision of what that could be called. Like you said, you know, what's their vision on the naming there? I mean, it has always crossed my mind, that point of what it would actually, what we'd be talking about as this stadium, because we refer to it as the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. A lot of people just say White Hart Lane, but very interested to see how that plays out. Thank you for that. Next point, Frank, it's more about Outgoings, right?
Yeah, there was a comment in from Cameron Patrick 03 on Instagram, who said, which players are Spurs looking to basically ship off, or who are there any that were willing and want to go, and who do Spurs want to get rid of, basically?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Son is the most talked about, I suppose, and the understanding I have is that he'll go off to pre-season. He'll play in South Korea against Newcastle United. I believe that's on August the 3rd. Then concurrently, he'll hold talks with Thomas Frank to determine whether or not he wants to stay or go. I still feel that the extension for Son by 1 year was not a clear indication that he won't leave this summer. It was more about allowing him to stay or go on his own terms. And if he goes, protecting his value and triggering the 1 year extension obviously helps that. So Son has concrete interest from Saudi Arabia. It's been there since 2023. He's turned down Saudi repeatedly when they've made informal approaches. It's never got to the point of a binding offer or any club-to-club talks. But there may be a possibility that Saudi try again for Son. And I would keep an eye on Al Ahly, one of the PIF clubs, Al Qadsiya, and even potentially Neom FC, because they're looking to strengthen on the left-hand side. But with Neom FC, they've not made any approach to Son yet, and their budget won't necessarily be as big as the other two sides that I mentioned, because Al Ahly are PIF controlled and Al Qadsiya are owned by the Saudi oil giant Aramco, and they've basically got their own money to spend, whereas a lot of the other Saudi clubs are reliant on central ministry funding. Al Qadsiya at the moment is the exception to the rule. They've got rich private owners. They can spend what they like. So there may be a possibility that Son and Saudi develops, but I think it'll all be on Son to discuss with Thomas Frank and then decide if he wants to go now, or more likely, if it isn't now, simply when he becomes a free transfer, because I don't think there'll be a scenario where Son is offered another contract extension. And you also have to look at Son's decision-making in light of incomings, because Matis Tel, as I revealed, staying at Spurs on a permanent deal, that was never in doubt. They were always going to take that permanent option. It was just about restructuring it a little bit. And then another left-sided attacker, or maybe a more versatile one, to arrive. And this is obviously where, for example, Gibbs-White, Kudus, or Kudus, somebody comes into the fray. And if Tottenham have two more attackers, and if James Maddison stays as well, his role is very interesting. There'll certainly be some clubs perhaps asking a question about James Maddison's minutes and involvement as well. So all of this adding up means less of a role, less game time, less minutes, potentially for Son. And he'll have to understand that from Thomas Frank and factor it into his decision-making. So that's one high-profile outgoing. Richarlison could be another. Bissouma, maybe one to watch too, although I'm not really aware of anything developing with either at this point. The Saudi interest in Richarlison links with an Everton return are wide of the mark. I'm told. And then the other potential exit that is not looking like being an exit now, which will be welcomed by Spurs fans, is Christian Romero, who Atleti were really serious about. And I think a lot of Tottenham fans were worried because Romero went on record and said, I want to play in La Liga one day. But at the moment, Atleti are moving on to other targets. Romero is too expensive. And I think we saw this coming for quite some time because Tottenham's valuation may have dropped from 12 months ago when it was more Real Madrid being linked with Romero, but it's still clearly significantly more than they paid. Whereas Atleti were looking at 45, 50 million as a guaranteed fee with some add-ons on top. Big gulf in valuation. And now it appears the more likely direction of travel is that Tottenham won't entertain Romero offers and they'll try and tie him down to a new deal.
Certainly not a 50 million, Ben. That is way undervalued for our star.
Yeah, and that was euros as well. I mean, obviously add-ons on top. So you might be talking 60, 65 million euros package. But I think to get a conversation with Spurs, you would probably have to have the overall package starting with a 7 in terms of euros. And some Spurs fans would even say pounds. But, some of it depends also on, can you go out there and find a centre-back and an elite centre-back that could come in? Because even if Spurs were to entertain a slightly lower number now than 12 months ago with Romero, and this was the feeling with Atletico Madrid 2, 3, 4 months ago when they were first exploring the deal, even if that was true and Atleti's perspective was with player buy-in, they could advance it somehow, Tottenham would have to find a replacement. And it's no good selling Romero at 60, 65, 70 if everyone in the market that you think is an instant replacement is 65, 70, 75. Otherwise, all in with your net spend, you lose money, or alternatively, you find yourself losing a player that if you're only going to replace them with someone same price, same style, but less bedded in, you may as well put your foot down and say, let's just keep Romero. And the good news, I think, for Tottenham is that at no point in this potential Atleti move, other than obviously saying he wants to play in La Liga one day, but at no point has Romero really agitated for a move. And that's definitely helped Spurs in terms of ignoring or rebuffing the Atleti advances, and there were some. And now they can be a bit calmer about the situation as they focus on trying to get that new deal over the line.
Absolutely positive news on Romero as well there. Just very quickly, I'm conscious of time. Also, your point about Son and potentially Saudi links. I'm thinking Ronaldo retiring, probably in the next year or two, let's be honest. Maybe he'd be the star player going over there potentially. But interesting, you mentioned a few clubs that have significant backing on that. As I said, really conscious of the time. I can see 550 of you watching live, which is blowing my mind, guys. Please smash the like. Please smash the subscribe if you want more content like this with great guests like Ben Jacobs. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. That would be absolutely most appreciated. But maybe one more question, Bennett. Like I said, conscious of time, if that's okay. I know, Frank, you wanted to ask one on this one we've got up as well around what's the feeling around the club and the aim.
Yeah, that basically is this seen as a season of stabilization a little bit? Is this one that they look at, just your general feeling that do Spurs look at it and go, finishing in the top 6 or 7 will be a success? Or is it we're spending to get into the Champions League now and that's where we want to be consistently again?
Yeah, I think the financial aim and the football aim will be different. So financially, they can't budget for Champions League football. No club would with the finish that they had last season. By the way, it'll probably be the same even for Newcastle or Chelsea or Forest. You have to budget super conservatively regarding European football and make sure that you don't overextend. But nonetheless, on the football field, the aim will be very high. I mean, Thomas Frank had a Brentford team not too far off European football. So to say that Thomas Frank can get a Brentford team, albeit one that he knew better and had worked with for a long time, to say you could get them within, I don't know exactly what it was, but maybe 7 to 10 points of some kind of European football. I think for Tottenham to go in with 7th or 8th would be a little bit underwhelming. Don't get me wrong. We won't necessarily have a public, we want Champions League, because that might put a lot of pressure on a new manager too. So I think publicly, it will be progress. Publicly, it will be patience. Publicly, it will be he needs a season to bed in. But privately, I think Tottenham will be disappointed if they finish outside of the top 6, which is difficult because you're competing against an improved Chelsea side. Liverpool and City have had outstanding windows. Arsenal are getting moving now. Villa are always going to be there. Forest might be there again too. So even if Tottenham bridge the gap and we're right up there with those sides, you might end up being 7th or 8th, which wouldn't be a bad thing if they show a clear style and a clear improvement. But it would be a bad thing if, for example, they start well and fade, or if they're 15th in the table and then string a few late results together. So I think the manner of how they finish higher will be more important than saying it has to be this finish or this position. But to really get this project going and to really benefit on any future investment and to really build on having Champions League now out of, in many ways, nowhere, they have to back that up with some kind of European football, because of the first point I made, that you budget so conservatively, all football clubs do. Like when Brighton got European football for the first time, they won't be budgeting for European football again, even if that's the football aim. So you need back-to-back, keep getting Champions League or get Champions League, Europa League, and then you can start really investing and getting going. The other thing that will be crossing Tottenham's mind away from the Premier League is just putting as much focus as they can on the Champions League because of the money and the ability to have a good run there. And it remains to be seen whether that affects Tottenham's league season. And it's all new ground as well for Thomas Frank. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see a bit of rotation, if we see a big focus on the Champions League stage, and if Tottenham make it as big a goal as to maybe get in top 4, top 5, as big a goal to get out of the league phase, to excite the fan base, to go on a run there and to bring in that type of money, which will also help the project too. So obviously, ideal world, it's Champions League and it's knockout stages of the Champions League. And then you back it up with Champions League again next season and you can really start to get going. But I am told that internally at Spurs, with so much change, Donna Cullen also going, Scott Munn, we know, on gardening leave at the moment, there's so much happening that it's perhaps a bit unfair to say to Thomas Frank, we need you to pull the rabbit out the hat and immediately go from just above the relegation zone to in that top 4 or top 5, if 5th is Champions League football, in the space of only 9 months. So that's where perhaps privately they will feel they can be very ambitious, but publicly it wouldn't surprise me to alleviate the pressure on Thomas Frank if we hear actually relatively underwhelming football goals in his first season in charge. And then if he surpasses them and does better than them, then everybody is going to be pleasantly surprised and feel like the season has been one of overperformance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Spurs fans will be conscious of how Ange did in his first 10 or 11 games where we were top of the table, and there's a bit of unrealistic expectations there. But I think your point there is very measured about the expectation. Again, conscious of time, I've been spammed with 100 messages, and Ben, feel free to literally answer this in a 2-liner about number 6s. And I've literally had to put people on a timeout in the chat that have spammed about, please ask him about number 6s, because that's the thought in the Tottenham camp here, is that we need a defensive midfielder, maybe to contribute to the defensive side of things alongside a Bergvall, maybe Morgan Gibbs-White in front or a James Maddison. That's the thinking. Do you know anyone we're linked with number 6-wise, and do you think that may happen?
Yeah, I think the defensive midfield is a key area for Tottenham, and the stats show that. We need to understand, by the way, the role of Archie Gray and whether he's going to be moved permanently or definitively into midfield. And if so, then that may be a factor in the thinking. There is genuine interest in Wolves' João Gomez, who is ranked pretty highly in terms of duels won and also his ability to recover the ball, and is a good progressive passer. So that might be one to watch too. And then they've liked for a while, even dating back to Fabio Paratici, Keishu Sano as well, who is at Mainz. I know we've heard links too with Lucas Toro, who is at Osasuna. I haven't really chased that at this point, so I wouldn't want to say he's a concrete possibility for Spurs, but definitely again fits into the profile that they're looking for. And they were offered Wilfred Ndidi too, who's available with a £9 million release clause at Leicester, but a very, very high wage, which is why all suitors that have explored the Ndidi deal want to do that for 4 or 5 million, because they know that Ndidi has a very big wage. And a move like that would be more about squad depth. It would be more about finding an experienced Premier League player, whereas some of the other targets that I've mentioned are perhaps a bit younger, or some may say they would come into the side and be starters. But yes, I think if Basuma goes, and depending on the role of Archie Gray, there's obviously room and need at Spurs for another number 6. And then just to clarify on the Ndidi front, because it really was just an internal conversation after he was offered to them, I'm not aware that Tottenham are actually one of the clubs moving for Ndidi, because what happens with these things is that people say, Ben Jacobs mentioned Spurs and Ndidi. Well, what I'm saying is he was offered to Tottenham, but I'm not aware that they're moving. It's more Everton, possibly Manchester United, Juventus, and Real Betis, plus some Saudi interest in Ndidi. So I do expect him to leave Leicester. I do expect Spurs to explore a number 6, but I'm not aware when offered Ndidi, and it was an offer to Spurs, not the other way around, that they really bit on the possibility of adding him, perhaps because they want a younger kind of profile.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the younger profile, everyone keeps talking about Adam Wharton, and there's not really concrete links there. And yeah, interesting couple names you mentioned there for the number 6. Certainly somewhere where we need to strengthen, Ben. I'm sure you agree. Ben, that was super insightful. Thank you very, very much. Like I said, I've already gone over a few minutes to what we said, so appreciate your time. And I know you've got to get back to transfer news.
Yeah.
Guys, there's 700 of you. 700 of you watching, so please do me 3 favors: smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. We're going to stay live, me and Frank, for a few more minutes, but we'll let Ben go. Turn on post notice for Ben as well, because he gives all the good transfer updates. I've got the post notice on Twitter for him, so go and check out Ben Jacobs. I mean, I'm sure many of you already follow Ben, but Ben, as I said, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate the updates there, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully I'll get to come on again soon for a little bit longer. Keep up the good work and have a good rest of your show. Take care, guys.
Thank you so much. All the best. Cheers.
Cheers,
Okay, Frank, lots to digest there. Guys, wow, few little exclusives, few little new points. We talked about Ndidi there. We talked about the investment. We talked about the stadium naming rights. All very, interesting points. Frank, anything to sort of go off to start with? And also, guys, we're going to stay live for around 10-15 more minutes. Hopefully you guys can get more questions in. I know so many of you are putting questions in, and I only had a certain amount of time with Ben, and we really appreciate his time today. So hopefully we got answered the number 6 stuff. We got answered all the other stuff for you. So I hope you did enjoy that insight. I loved it. But if you did enjoy this type of thing, so we can get Ben on in the future, your support is greatly appreciated. If you could like the video and subscribe to Spurs Related and turn on the post notifications to never miss us going live, that would be much appreciated. And I really do appreciate all the support, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. Frank, let's just pick up on a couple of points. I mean, where do you want to start? Morgan Gibbs-White, the Son stuff, the other midfield links. What do you want to say?
Let's start with Gibbs-White, because it feels like it's all we talk about, and to be nice to talk about it positively and then push it away. It sounded positive. It sounded good. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the news I sort of expected, but it's nice to be reinforced by an intelligent head that knows what he's talking about, and so that's nice for that's nice for reassurance, and I'm sure hopefully we can get that done. As I said the other day, that I'd be massively surprised if it wasn't kind of done this week, just because I didn't think it would really, I didn't think it would drag on too long. I don't think Forest, as Ben said, I don't think Forest will go legal or fully legal, because it's time consuming, it's financially consuming, and there'll be arguments. And I'm not suggesting this at all, but as Ben said, they have to then air all their dirty laundry themselves, and they are. I'm sure there's business they've done. Again, I'm not going to accuse them of anything, but I'm sure there's business that they've done that probably isn't the cleanest, and so. I think for the sake of just ease and simplicity of it all, I think they're delaying it. I think they're also probably delaying it to get a replacement in. As Ben said, that they probably haven't had the time. Spurs went about it quickly and got it done quickly, and so they're probably just in a state of panic and need something so they can go and get El Kudus, as Ben said, or whoever it be, James McAtee or whoever they're looking at to replace him.
Yeah, no, that El Kudus one. it's new to me. Perhaps I missed that in the media, but that seemed like a bit of a new one. I also saw that Nottingham Forest were linked with Thiago Almada. Well, he's now gone to Atletico Madrid. I also saw that they were linked with Jacob Ramsey. So definitely, as Ben said, Nottingham Forest are looking for a replacement for Morgan Gibbs-White, which says to me they haven't really got a leg to stand on when it comes to letting him go and join Tottenham. And it was, like you said, it was all very positive. It seems like the deal is still going to go ahead. It's just a matter of time. And, you know, I'd have to rewind to get Ben's exact words, but essentially it seems like, you know, whether it's by the end of before the preseason or not, it seems like Morgan Gibbs-White will be playing in a Tottenham shirt, which is very, very positive for all of us, especially when I get people in here every day saying, oh, let's move on, it's not going to happen. Listen, Morgan Gibbs-White is a top player. You know, he's one of England's best midfield prospects. He's only 25. He's got time to get even better. You know, he's not even at his peak yet, Frank. And we're talking about a player that's been linked with Manchester City and top clubs. And obviously Tottenham swooped for that, thinking probably 60 million was a good buy. And this is part of it. Forest probably are just not happy that they're letting their best asset go for 60 million. Similar to the Christian Romero point he made about, you know, if it was 50, 60 million, Spurs may see that as not being able to even replace near to a Christian Romero level player. So I think that's really, really interesting point. And it goes with, like I said, the Morgan Gibbs-White thing is Forest probably realised that to Forest, he's worth 70, 80 million, not 60, because they're going to have to replace him with someone as good or near to as good. And players aren't coming cheap these days, as we know. Some of the transfer figures are absolutely nuts. Lots of people only just trying to say Morgan Gibbs-White to Spurs. If you want to rewind to the start of the stream for the first 10 or 15 minutes, we spoke about Morgan Gibbs-White with journalist and commentator Ben Jacobs. So go and check that out on the replay if you want to get the latest on that. We also talked about the stadium naming rights, the investment, and the number 6 options, as well as Tottenham's chances for this season and maybe Frank's targets, which may be slightly more vague for his first season, but depending on how he does, he may have more concrete sort of expectations next season. And as Ben said, you know, Thomas Frank has, you know, no experience playing in European competitions, so it'll be interesting to see how he fare amongst 4 different competitions: FA Cup, Carabao Cup, Premier League and Champions League, as well as obviously having the Super Cup in just a few weeks' time. Frank, what else did you want to pick up on? I mean, like I said, there's so much to digest. And guys, still 500 of you in the house. I thought when Ben went, you'd all go off. But no, I appreciate all the support. Honestly, really do. Make sure you're hitting the like button. Let's get that to 200 likes. If there's 500 watching, surely at least half of you can smash the likes. And guys, I say to you, I only plug it a couple times a video, but a special one like this, surely we can get those likes and subscribes up to help the channel, to get us great journalists on again. And hopefully you've enjoyed the insight today. If there's any more people in the chat that want to ask questions, by the way, for now, for the last few minutes and create a talking point, smash it in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. But Frank, what did you want to pick up also from what Ben said?
I think the stadium naming rights were quite interesting. I think it was Ben himself, and it's going to be really bad if this is wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Ben himself that put out a long thing the other day about how, you know, the American investors, which he mentioned this evening, were them and a Saudi group were both in advanced talks. And looking at it, I read from a separate source, and again, I don't know if this is true or not, that there was rumours that it was Aramco, who Ben mentioned himself, and they own Aston Martin in the F1. He said they own, I can't remember which one of the Saudi teams. He said they own one of the Saudi teams.
Neom or the Al? Yeah. I think it was one of them.
One of them, and he said that that they own them as well. They're basically one of the largest oil companies in Saudi Arabia, and so that'd be very interesting. The Aramco Arena, I mean, maybe that suits well. It works. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, because that's going to help generate some more money. I've always been quite keen on Spurs keeping the name of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, because it does push the brand of Tottenham Hotspur out globally with the amount they have in. They have the F1, they have obviously the concerts, they have the NFL, and so it does push the brand of Tottenham Hotspur out. And so people in America know because of the NFL or because Beyonce is there or whatever. And so, but I think it gets to a point where that brand's been pushed out enough that then you need a solid form of income coming in for your stadium being used as a, you know, and all these other clubs have it. I mean, City this week got a deal with, I think it was Umbro or Puma, one of them. It was worth £1 billion, which is like insane. And I imagine probably not the cleanest deal of all time. But my point is that these deals can be done, and they should be done because they can help you push on and progress. And I think Spurs are getting to a point now where they are starting to sell some of their avenues to different companies and things. And as Ben said, that's maybe happened. That's maybe happening. Maybe it won't happen for another year, but it feels like it's getting to that stage.
Interesting that it's probably either American investment or links or discussions, plus ones from Saudi and, like he said, from as high as the government as well. So very, very interesting. And also, I wanted to touch on what he said about the Wolves midfielder, because I haven't heard that one yet. The Wolves centre mid that we're potentially linked with on that one as well.
Yeah, João Gomez was someone that I read a rumor, and again, this could be a load of rubbish. I think it was last summer. I want to say last summer. Maybe it was the January before. And it was someone at Wolves or a Wolves fan or something that apparently had said that he was quite close to Tottenham. Nothing ever materialised. There were no other rumours, nothing. And then it was about a week before the deadline day. Nothing happened. It moved on. And it was all very quiet. So I maybe that was something. Maybe that was something that happened, what could have happened at the time, that Spurs were. I get the impression he's probably one that Spurs have followed for a while. If that is the case, if that was a name that was popping up. I think it was him, and I'm pretty certain it was him that scored twice against us in Andrew's first season when they came to Tottenham and beat us 2-1. And I have to say I like him. From what I've seen, I think he looks controlled, he looks calm, he looks composed on the ball. He's a good enough tackler. He's tough. He's certainly a very solid six. I think he would be an interesting one. I don't know how much he cost you. My money would probably be on 50, 60. But yeah, no, I have to say, from what I've seen, I like him.
Yeah, interesting. What is it with Wolves and having good midfielders? Like they seem to always spawn a good midfielder or a good striker out of something. It's good business from them, to be fair. I think their transfer business is quite underrated. Like, we talk about Brighton, we talk about Brentford, but I think Wolves actually make some pretty decent signings as well. Obviously we sort of asked Ben about Wharton, nothing really, concrete there. I just thought, very interesting points. One point that we didn't discuss with him, but not as not as important, but today's news about Luton Town have apparently agreed a fee in principle to sign Josh Keeley from Spurs. I thought, especially when he was on loan at Leyton Orient last season and he had a good spell. Fact that he's probably going elsewhere, interesting, don't you think?
Yeah, I did a little video on my TikTok earlier on. Little plug, it's below me. And I spoke about it, and I said I was just quite disappointed, really. I was disappointed because, I can look at it from two different ways. I'm disappointed because he was probably one of, if not the best goalkeeper in League One last season. He was a big part of Leyton Orient. When he came into the team, they were, I want to say, in the relegation zone, I think, before he played a game. I think 6, 7, 8 games in. And he came in and they went on this push and they went on this run. And they got into the playoffs, got to the final. They obviously lost. He saved 2 or 3 penalties in the semi-final. He was huge for them. And one of their better players of the season. And so it's disappointing on that respect because I think he's a good goalkeeper. And I saw that Alistair Gold said that Spurs have an internal... They've got a buyback clause. That's what Spurs said.
Okay.
But that Spurs have that Spurs have an internal belief that he's going to be. Sorry, these keep dying. An internal belief that he's going to be the Premier League goalkeeper one day, and so that's interesting.
I think also, Frank, that I just don't think there's room for him. Like, think about, we have Vicario, we have Kinski, and we have 1 or 2 on the fringe as well. Obviously, Alfie Whiteman left. But I feel like, where does Josh Keeley come in? Maybe third choice at a push. And that's the other thing, is like, maybe we do cash in. And interesting, we have a buyback clause. Little engagement piece. You guys know I love to get your comments in the chat. Scroll down for me and get your comments in. One player for the rest of the window that you could sign, whether that's Eze, whether that's Adam Wharton, whether that's João Gomez, as we've just talked about. One player, either the position And if you want to put the name of the player, whack it in the comments now. I'll bring them up. There's 500 of you. I want to see 500 comments of number sixes or strikers or left backs. Pop it in to the comments. And while you're scrolling down to the comments, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, because it's all free to do so, and it massively, massively helps us out. Abdul Rahman's back in here. And by the way, I did give you a little timeout because you spammed number 6 7 times, but doesn't mean that I don't appreciate your support. I was trying to get to some of the comments that people wanted to ask. Paulinia and Gomez says Rodney. Obviously, Abdul said Messi, but guys, keep whacking in your comments. Frank, well, who would you say if you had one player, maybe you had 100 million max or 80 million max? Who are you going for and why?
I think probably Adam Wharton. I mean, I've said about Wharton a lot, and I really love Adam Wharton. Having said that, though, if I was sort of looking away from that, if he was going to be too much or whatever, I would probably look to find an attacker that's a left wing sort of striker hybrid. I'm not sure who. I'd probably need to do some proper research on that. But Adam Wharton's
not your Angelo Stiller that you love to talk about as the number 6.
No, I'm taking Wharton over him. I think if I have a preference, but I think he'd be slightly cheaper than Wharton. So if you're being slightly priced out of Wharton, then I'd look at Stiller certainly. But yeah, I'd if not, then as I say, a Johan Visser type, maybe someone that's a little bit younger. So I'd need to have a proper research of that. But yeah,
Visser's a good shout. Definitely worked closely with Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank brought the best out of him. Obviously, an insane season last year. 19 goals, all non-penalty goals. Only one short of Mohamed Salah. Same as Haaland, same as Isak. That's not talked about enough. Visser scoring 19 Premier League goals, no penalties. That's level with Haaland and Isak. Just let that sink in. Isak, we're talking about £130 million. I'm not saying this is as good as Isak. I'm not saying that. But to score 19 Premier League goals, all non-penalties, is underrated because he's not talked about up there, is he? You know, and he could be available for cheaper than an Eze or whoever else we may be linked with as a marquee signing, which is interesting. Kicks TV said Moani. I think Juventus are about to sign him on a permanent. Could be wrong. Lee's saying great show, lads. Honestly, guys, really appreciate all the support. It does mean a lot, and hopefully you guys can keep coming back to Spurs Related. We're aiming to go live pretty much every single day, so turn on those noties to see when we go live and keep bringing these great comments and thoughts. Hopefully we're building a great community here, so that would be absolutely amazing. So yeah, keep liking, subscribing, and notey bells. I know I said I only do it twice, but it's most appreciated. Honestly, your support, and I love bringing up all your comments. I even reply to every single comment on offline videos. So if you're watching on repeat, I'm going to be replying to all you there. Carlos saying I would get Barcola. I mean, that one is potentially a little bit unrealistic considering he's a PSG starter. But like a realistic signing, Sesko, could we get Sesko? Seeing as Arsenal are probably going to get Gyökeres, so it looks like that's going to go through. It's interesting, isn't it? Cheeky loan move for Camavinga. Does Camavinga even get in Real Madrid's starting 11 anymore? They've got so many different options. I'd like to see us get Stassin. There's so many different options. Would love a Visser. You two are great hosts. Appreciate the kind words. My friend Frank, any more maybe final couple of points and then we'll wrap things up?
Yeah, there's a comment I kind of want to put up from Paul Weeks. I was speaking to you beforehand about this. This is sort of my view on it, and I've been someone that I'm very skeptical nowadays of these Twitter or X in the nose, because as a 12-year-old I was caught out, an 11-year-old when I first, or 13-year-old when I first got the app, I was caught out way too many times by people that were liars. So I'm very skeptical. Having said that, Timothy is, despite his name, which is probably hard to really believe, I think he's actually one of the better, more reliable ones.
It's not your burner account, is it, Frank? Because you do rate this guy quite heavily, I've got to say.
Yeah,
I think it's worth noting that if we do talk about speculation from in the nose, we're not saying it's concrete news. We're just discussing, we're debating. And also, Paul, you may have just joined, but we did a about 30 minutes with Ben Jacobs, all things about Morgan Gibbs-White. It all seems very positive. It looks like it's going to go through. It just depends on what happens with this legal thing. It's all a bit up in the air. I think, as Ben also said, Forest or Spurs won't really want to go to court over this. So maybe it can be settled out of the courtroom or out of the legal side of things, certainly. Interesting. I think we'll leave it there. There is still 450 of you in the house. If you did enjoy today's episode with Ben Jacobs, please do smash the thumbs up and comment your thoughts. Subscribe to Spurs Related if you are new, and turn the notification bells on to never miss a live stream when we do go live with journalists or go live on Spurs Related and bring you new videos. Plenty to come, more to come this week. We've got another live stream tomorrow with another great guest. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you there. Hopefully you've all enjoyed. And as I said, like, comment, subscribe, and ring those noti bells on for me. Give me a little ring, ding in the chat. Frank, that was good fun, wasn't it?
It was brilliant. Probably my favourite one we've done so far. Actually, I've done so far. It was pretty cool to have an actual journalist on with us and do it and get some insight. So it was good.
Exactly. I know we won't become tier 3 or 4 sources. We're still going to always clarify what is the most reliable sources. Ben Jacobs, who came on today, I regard as a very, very, very good journalist that has knowledge and inside information sometimes. So, it was great to get him on. And if you want to watch on repeat on certain bits, please do go and rewind. Okay. Thank you so much again, guys. Really appreciate all the kind comments. Really appreciate all the kind words and the support and everything you're doing for the channel. Keep liking, keep subscribing, keep turning those bells on, ring, and comment. And as always, remember, come on, you Spurs, do some more sign-ins. Come on.